Hey guys, this is Alan Rage. Thank you for joining me. 13th of January 2019. And today we're going to be installing and configuring the SASA GateScanner desktop server and clients, obviously. Now, before we begin, I would like to clarify that we are assuming you already have in your environment, whether it's production or lab for testing purposes, assuming you already have the SASA GateScanner engine installed and configured in your environment, assuming you already have Microsoft SQL Server installed, needs to be developer if it's for testing, cannot be Express because the SQL engine, the SQL agent will not run. And last but not least, Active Directory Domain Controller, also known as DC. Alright, let's begin. Now, before we begin, there are two types of virtualization. We have the VMware ES6 or a workstation if it's on your desktop at home or in your work environment, or you have the Hyper-V, which comes with Microsoft included, which I'm going to be using in this session. For me, it's easier, and I don't like to configure a VMware workstation on my computer. For personal reasons. Okay, so first thing first, as you can see, I have the SQL turned on. I have the Active Directory turned on, which has two NICs. One of them is also on the same VLAN as this one, which is not 192.168.4.10, and the SASA GateScanner engine. Now we're going to add a desktop. As you can see, I already have one, but I'm going to do a new one for this session. First thing first, let's create a new virtual machine. Call it, it's going to be on VLAN 4. So I'm going to call it SASA Desktop. I'm going to give it the IP of 192.168.4.91. I'm going to place it. Generation 1, I'm going to give it 248. You can do it for less, for just test environments, but in production you're going to need much more. I'm not going to use dynamic. I'm going to give it a private NIC, and I'm going to give it 2 drives as always with the SASA systems. First one will be drive C. Later on I'm going to add a new one, which will be drive D. I'm going to make this one 128. Now this is a thin provision we're talking about. I'm going to add an operating system, Windows Server 2016 evaluation. Again, it's for a lab environment. I'm going to click finish. Now I will also go to settings. I will associate it with the VLAN 4. Where is it? I'm going to click the enable virtual LAN, which is VLAN, short for VLAN. The environment is already installed on VLAN 4. I'm going to click apply, and I'm going to add a new drive. Add, use whatever, click new, VHDX obviously. Now this is like thin provision, so I'm going to be using this one. Fixed size is like thick lazy. We do not want that. A side note, on a real production environment, always use thick lazy, not thin provision. What you want really is to avoid situation where the guest thinks it has space, but the host does not. But since this is a lab environment, I don't really care. I'm going to be using thin provision. Done. I'm going to be clicking OK. I'm going to start the system, double click, and connect to the console. Click next, install now. If it's too fast for you, you can always pause. And I'm gonna be skipping the parts where you're just gonna have to wait, so this video won't take forever. Now in here you want to go to desktop experience. You can use either data center or standard evaluation. Again, you want the GUI, so desktop experience. Click next. Of course you're going to read all that. I just read it. Click next. Custom. I'm going to be installing the system on drive C, the OS. Click next. And it's running. Now I'm going to be skip this part because it's going to take a while. Okay, so I skip the part where you have to wait for the percentage. Then once it's finished, it's restarted by its own. Gives you that screen. Wants you to give a strong administrative password with complex. If it's in a lab environment, capital A, small a, numbers from 1 to 6. We'll cut it. Okay, you gave it password, you can log back in. Now, the next few steps we're going to take are kind of conflict, but I will explain. Basically, what we're trying to do is harden the server, because what we're actually going to do is take the UAC off so that the installation of the SASA software can work properly. This is part of the prerequisite. Now in this video we're going to be actually connecting, as mentioned before, to an existing SQL server, which in this example is like an existing organization. Of course you can install it on the same server, a separate standalone unit, and then you're going to connect yourself to the loopback, and you're not going to be working with an external SQL. But that's up to you, what you're trying to gain. In here, I'm going to pretend as if I'm part of a big organizational unit. Okay, first step, I'm going to be adding roles, features, actually. I'm going to be needing the framework. I'm going to be needing Telnet. And that's pretty much it for now. Click install. Once it's done, I'm going to close it. I'm going to go to configure this local server. Now I'm going to take you can set up the time zone. In our case, it's going to be Israel, which is GMT +2, Jerusalem, UTC. Click OK. But what's really important is to allow for remote connections. So as you can see, it's disabled at the moment. I'm going to move it to allow, remove that, click OK, and now I can have an NH session immediately. I'm gonna have to re-authenticate because now it's working on a remote protocol. I'm going to change the computer name, which is the host name. I'm going to change it to SASA-desktop. Click OK. Click close. Restart later. We're going to have to run some other changes here. Configuring IP address. I'm going to remove IPv6. And you have to give it a static IP address. In our case, it's 91, class C. The router is 254. You can use the Google public DNS, 888. Close. And remove the Internet Explorer and H-Security, because otherwise you can really do nothing with the Explorer. Okay, next you want to create the users. So it's a right click. I went to computer management. If I did it too fast, local users, click new, create 4 users. SASA will be the first one for the entire system. Write down the password. At this point you can use Notepad++ or whatever is more convenient for you. Scanner will be the user for the engines, so that if it gets locked out, it doesn't locks the system. This is my lab admin user for my labs. I always use that. And a backup user. So if I get locked out, I can still sign into the server. Create, done. Now you're gonna go to groups, administrator, you're gonna add them all to this group. So you can find them here. Click on the control button while clicking, and then OK. Apply, close it, go to users, remove them from users. You don't want them to be standard users, you want them to be administrators. At this point, you're going to go to run secpol.msc, and so that the server will not be able to brute force and get hacked, you're going to go to account policies, password policies. You can remove that. This is just for my own convenience, but more important is the account lockout policy. When you install server 2016, comes without any, which means I can work the server until it gets hacked. I don't want that. So I'm going to create a threshold of 10 attempts, 10 failure logon attempts, and I'm going to lock the user for 60 minutes. That will keep hackers from the servers. Now, at this point, I'm going to run a command prompt, right click, command prompt as admin. I'm going to go to computer management again, disable the administrators, the guest, and all the default accounts, just like that. Close it and restart the server so that I can log on with the users I just created. Server is restarting. Now I have all my users. I'm going to be using lab admin. Again, this is for all my labs. You can call it whatever you want, makes no difference. Now allow me a few seconds just to reorganize my desktop environment. It'll make it simply easier for me to work with. You don't have to do it. If you like it the way it is, just go with it. I'm going to add some icons in here to make it simpler for me. Background simply holds down the server, makes it slower. Alright, let's call the local drive, which is the OS drive, drive C. Now you're going to need to initialize the second drive, which is missing. So right click, go to disk management in here. This pops out. Choose GPT and initialize. Once it's done, right click, new simple volume, next, the letter D. Call it drive D so you won't get confused. And you're done. Now you have 2 drives. Drive C is for the OS. Drive D will be for the SASA GateScanner desktop. Now let's install the latest framework. So first thing first, I'm gonna download the Google Chrome so it'll be easier to work with. So I'm gonna skip this part, as anyone can do that without instructions. So now that I have Chrome, I'm gonna go to download the .NET framework. The latest nowadays is 4.7.2 and it actually fits the system. So we're gonna be needing that. Let's go ahead and download. Once it's finished, let's run it. Yes. Agree. Of course, I'm gonna read all that. Next. Now I'm gonna skip that part so you don't have to wait with me. You're gonna have to wait on your own. That's your problem, not mine. Anyhow, what's important to say is and to understand is that you can actually install SQL on this server or on a separate server, as we did here. This is part of a larger, much larger environment. So there is one SQL to run all the schemes on all the databases. And if you want to learn how to install and configure SQL on your system, you can either watch my videos or just simply go online and type in install and configure latest SQL. What you need to remember is you actually have to use in lab environments developer and not Express. Express will not enable you to run SQL agent, which is crucial here. So go ahead, do whatever is more convenient for you. Okay, done. It does require a restart, so I'm going to go ahead and restart the server. Go to the same user. I'm going to enter it. Now you're going to need to disable the UAC. So you're going to go to users account again, change user account control, just scroll it down, click OK, yes. It does require a restart, however, we're going to restart it later on anyhow, so I'm not going to do it now. Alright, now from the vendor, you're going to need all these files. So I'm going to pour them here into installation files, and I'm just going to simply copy them over. Done. Now the first one I'm going to be running is create SASA folders. Run it as admin. Now when I run it, you can see that on drive D I have nothing. Now as you would see, it starts creating all these folders. Now we are not done here, because although it created it, the station management is irrelevant for this server, as we're not going to be installing the MOM console on this one. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. GSS management I'm not going to touch, simply because I'm not that familiar with. Auto mode, we're going to change anything that is auto mode to desk, which is a shortened for desktop. So auto mode logs will be desk logs. Auto mode out will be desk out. Alright, this is for the GSS shares, and we're going to have to give it permissions. So I'm going to go to generally to drive D, and I'm going to give on security, I'm going to add SASA, which is the first user I created, give it full permission. I'm going to add scanner for the engines, give it full permission. This is, going to add the lab admin. I'm going to have the backup user. This is simply just to give it permission on the security level, on the NTFS. However, it's not fixing the shares. You need to go to properties, sharing, see it's already shared. This is what the SASA create folder does. But instead of everyone, add SASA and add GateScanner. I'm sorry, just scanner, that's the user. And give it to lab admin so you can test the path, the share path locally. Give it OK. And you're good on the permission side. You can close it. You can double check it. Go to run, //, go to your IP address, which is in my lab, and you can see you can access it. You can create a folder. You can delete it. These are all the permissions you need. Once you can do that, you're okay. Alright, I'm going to close that. Go back to the installation files. Delete everything that I did. Next step would be to install the manager. This will actually create the services. So now you're going to connect it to your database. My database in my environment is this one right here. It's not Windows. It has a dedicated SQL user. This is important. Give it a different name from the default, because you don't want to run over an existing system. So in my case, I'm going to call it GateScanner Desktop. Since I already have an environment with a working desktop, I'm going to call it Desktop 2. What it does, it's going to connect to that SQL, and it's going to create that database. Done. Complete. Install. See that icon is created here. Now what I like to do is, since it's when you do open location, it shows up in here, and this is actually GateScanner Management Windows, I'm going to delete this shortcut and I'm going to recreate it so that I can run it as admin. Saves a lot of trouble later on. So this is the path where it actually is. I'm going to drag it here, create shortcut, right click, properties, make it run as admin always. Saves a lot of time, a lot of trouble later on. Next, I'm going to be running this one, and I'm going to need to reconfigure again the database connection. So the previous part is to create the database. This part is to connect to it. It's like two different parts. So don't feel like you're overdoing it. It's perfectly fine. And as you can see, it's already inherited. This is the database you created. Save password, test it first. Only if you receive connection succeed, only then proceed. Go ahead, save. Username. This one we're going to skip. I'm going to choose root drive E. It's not going to be a management console. It's not going to be multi-source. Leave the desktop. User, however, will be for the system SASA. And go ahead and skip. Now with admin, successfully you can connect to the system. This part one, I'm going to close it for now. We're going to get back to it. I just wanted to make sure it's up and running. You can go ahead, delete that file. Next, the setup. I'm sorry. Cancel it. Always right click and run as admin. Saves a lot of trouble. Now this is the path where it's going to install it. Install. Finish. Done. Delete it. Now the syslog server. Now for the syslog, also you're going to have to configure it. So we're going to point it again to the SQL and the database you just created. We said it's GateScanner Desktop 2, since we already had one up and running. This is just for the video tutorial. First test it. Well, it's not actually working, but I'm gonna assume it's fine. Click save. This part is okay, leave it as is, unless you have a organizational syslog. You want to forward all the logs also to that syslog. If you have QRadar or whatever syslog the company has, go to TCP listener, enable. Now remember this port, you're going to have to open it in the firewall later on. Go to Q, enable Q, save it. It says restart required, but it stopped. I never ran it. So I'm going to run it now, and I can exit it. Now this is the tricky and interesting part. This is actually the client. Now in my case I have two versions, Hebrew or English. I'm going to obviously go with English. I'm going to copy that file to its root directory, and I'm going to run the client configuration set. Again, run it as admin, saves a lot of trouble later. Now the desktop server IP is this server. In my case it's this IP. Active Directory, as I said, it has another nick, but this is the IP. To test it, open command prompt. First I'm going to ping it, then I'm going to telnet it on port 389, which is LDAP. I can see it's connected successfully. We're good. Now memorize those ports. I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to go to the Windows firewall, and we're going to open a TCP listener for all these ports. Go to inbound, right click new, add a new rule which opens a port. It's going to be 20,000, one more zero, dash 20,010. Double check yourself. It's going to be TCP, not UDP. Allow the connection, allow for all profiles. I'm going to call it AAA port. Put it in the description as well, just for the simple fact that if anyone works on the server, it will pop to the top of the list, so we'll be able to know that something custom has been made. If it's been years after you're gone and somebody needs to migrate to a different server, he will figure out what you actually did here. New rule, port, again, this is for the syslog, so it's UDP. It's going to be 5500 until the range of 5501. Next, next, next. Again with the trick of AAA. So anybody that works on the server will understand what you did here, in case you have to open an actual physical firewall, like Checkpoint, FortiGate, whatever. Done here, close it. Now the username will be a username that will be able to access to a share which is on the DC, or you can use it on the desktop server, but it's always recommended to use the DC. So I'm going to use my Active Directory is just AD, this is what I called it, and over there I have a lab admin user as well, surprise. I will give it my password. Now for the domain, I'm going to give it the fully qualified domain. Usually it will be your domain.local.com.net, up to you. In the path will be the path of the config file XML which will be created. So first I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to go to run. I'm going to go to / 192.168.4.10. I can go either to netlogon. In my case, I already opened a folder and I call it SASA Desktop, which is dedicated for this purpose. I'm going to delete that file. because I'm going to use mine. Copy that path onto here and add config.xml. This will be the file you're going to create and put later on for distribution. At this point, you can see that it's asking me to authenticate. I'm going to authenticate. Obviously, no problem there. And it's empty. And in here, I don't have a config XML file. Now watch what happens when I click the update MSI. This created and this created. You can do it by date modified. You can simply see that it matches the time right now. So I'm going to copy them both in here. Okay. Can delete it from here. It wants me to close this one. Done. Now, the XML, the config XML, needs to go to the share location, which all the clients gonna be able to sign into and actually view this file. Now you can put it on the net logon. I choose to create a dedicated SASA desktop folder, and I put it here. This is the MSI you actually just created for your organization or for your lab environment. This is what the client will use. This is what you're going to spread out in GPO or SCCM, however you're going to run it in your organization. At this point, I'm going to go to a VM, which will be the client. I'm going to start it. I'm going to put it on the same VLAN, which is VLAN 4. Oh, it has 2 NICs, so that's good enough. One NIC is on VLAN 4, so it can access all the Active Directory and the desktop server. And I'm going to verify it. Now, I already joined it to the domain because I use it for a whole lot different testing in domain environments. So I'm going to log into the domain. Again, my domain is AD. This is my user. Now, for the testing, you have to use a domain environment. Now, this is something I actually did before. It's not going to be good for this example, so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. Going to uninstall it. It needs a restart. Once it's done, I'm going to restart the system. This is the VM I'm going to restart. I'm going to log back in. Now, obviously, you won't have to do this. This is just because I already did some testing on this machine. I'm going to delete this. Now, this is the newly created client. So I'm going to copy this one over here. For the sake of testing, you can spread it out via GPO or SCCM. It's up to you how you're going to spin your lab. I'm going to pretend I already did that, and I will install it manually on the station. While this is running, we can save time and actually go back to the server and start configuring it. So you're going to go back to the GateScanner management window, which you created a shortcut. Run it, admin, we did not change the password here, and this is where you're going to actually start to configure the server. So let's do that. Settings, make sure this is correct, Yes, it is. We already did that. Now you're going to generate a certificate. So you're going to click on create. Yes. Completed successfully. Now you're done in resources. Click on desktop, go to the next one, client server. In here, go to ports, and you see this is the limitation of how many what is the restriction for client count. So I'm going to change it to 0, which stands out for no restriction. Hit the save button and go to domain. Now in here, this is where the things get messy a little bit. You have to make sure you're doing this correctly. Click on new. You want to add new domain. Now in here is the full qualified domain name. It can be yourdomain.local. In my case, it's ad.com. The AD server IP or DNS name, if it's behind load balancer, such as F5 or whatever load balancer you're using. In my case, I'm going to give it a plain, simple IP address. Now the user that's going to be running the query. In my case, I use the same user for everything. Of course, it's not the best practice. Create a new user just for the sake of query. Once you're done here, click on save. And next, you're going to need to choose which group you will add to the sake of to be able to use the clients. I mean the desktop SASA clients. So you can create a OU and then put a new group, or just create a new group for choosing which user will enjoy the benefit of being able to use the GateScanner SASA desktop client. However, for this sake of demonstration, I'm going to use domain users. You can do semicolon to add more. I'm going to use domain users, which includes pretty much everyone. Or in my case, domain admins. So let's do both. Hit the save. Click synchronize now. Warning, okay. Complete. Check connection, okay. Click show group and users. Now I'm showing domain users. Now you can go to show groups and users, and supposedly I should have seen the users here. Now I don't, so let's figure out what's going on. I'm gonna go to my Active Directory server. Don't want to install any updates now. I'm gonna watch the groups, domain admins and domain users, see who the members are. So this is not what I wanted to achieve. Now these two users I wanted to catch, the Alon and lab admin. I didn't. So I'm gonna try and create a new, I already did SASA desktop group, which includes all those users. And I'm gonna copy it, paste it over here, sync now, try it again, show groups and users, SASA desktop, bingo. I got all the users I want. I'm gonna exit. Don't forget to click the save button. Turns from red to blue. This is your sign. From here I'm going to go to desktop, go to the next one, which is profiles. I'm going to allow for the default, which is active. So I'm going to allow for the default clean. I'm going to add a new profile. I'm going to copy this one. A new profile will be for the IT department. Normally these guys, technological guys, will need to do some stuff that others won't. So I'm going to call it IT users. I'm going to create an OU later on for them, so they can run some scans, which is specifically for their needs. I'm going to remove download as archive. I don't want it to be zipped. I'm going to click save. Now I'm going to go to targets. Auto downloads. Now I'm going to be, normally I would enable this, because if you don't enable it, the user have to take a manual step in order to get the files that he actually wanted to get. So I don't see any point in that, because if the user bleached or converted, depends on the policy, some files, obviously he wants to get them already. So there's no point in making the users take another step in order to get the file, just making things too much complex, and I would like to make their life a whole lot easier. So I'm going to use enable auto download. Now in here you can play with it. You can put it on their temp, you can put it on this is the syntax, on their documents, and you can use it on some randomly created UNC share that you want to use, or you can simply use it on an absolute path that you can create in, like let's say script. So in here, for the sakes of demonstration, I'm going to open a new folder. I'm going to call it SASA. I'm going to give it permissions so that the system can push files in here and it won't face any difficulties. I'm going to be adding SASA, give it full permission. I'm going to be adding lab admin, give it full permission. And lastly, I'm going to add scanner, give it full permission, click OK, and I'm going to copy this path. Files should eventually get here in this demonstration. Save. And you can go to mails and configure the mails that after the scan is complete, it sends mail. Now the mail is going to be taken from the users, but from this part right here, from here. So if you don't have emails here and you haven't synchronized it in here, then obviously the email feature will not work. All right. Let's proceed. These are the profiles. Now these are taken from the MOM console. Since this is not a MOM console server, it does not manage the engines. It's an already pre-existing environment. I'm gonna first turn on the server which does run the MOM console. I'm going to turn it on because I forgot, and I'm going to copy his IP. It's 90 at the end, and I'm going to actually be able to import. Now it says MOM console not found. Get from file, yes. Now I'm going to go to the share. I'm going to go to SASA MOM. Read policies. This is my lab policy, and I'm going to choose the XML, and obviously I'm going to use the multi-source, which is more fit for something that is automated, unlike mail. Now make sure to hit the save button and then go back to client server. Not client server, profiles. Now in here, since you already imported, this opens up. And again, it's multi-source, which is more fit. You can create a custom one. And for the IT users, only these two are active. So I'm going to hit save again, and I'm ready to start the services. Go to services, start the first one, start this one, and there's another service you have to remember to turn on. So go to services.msc. You can go to run as we did earlier, services.msc. I already have it open here. So this is a crucial part. Without it, it won't work. As you can see, currently, these are the listeners I have on I have two 20,005, 20,007. Now as you can see, once I'm going to turn this one to automatic, because I want it to start as the system runs, and I'm going to start it, so now there's a range of random ports, 20,001, 20,003, 5, 6, 7. This makes a whole lot more sense. At this point, I'm going to stop. I'm going to save everything. And I do need to restart the whole server. So I'm going to hit the restart button. Now, while it's restarting, I'm going to go back to the VM1, or whatever you called it, and I'm going to proceed with the installation. Next, next, install. This is the customly created file. Hit yes. Finished. Now it has to do a restart. Obviously, I'm going to give it. In the meantime, you can log back into the server after it's restarted and hit nets.aon, find str 20,000, and you can see that the server is supposed to listen to some random 20,000 ports, although I can only see 20,005. So I'm going to check the status of the services. I'm going to skip to the letter G. Now it's on automatic delayed. I'm going to move it to automatic, which will make it run faster. I'm going to do the same on desktop server, automatic. I'm going to push it to start. Now they're all running. I'm going to close it, and you can see there's a whole lot more listeners. 20,000, 20,001, 3, 5, 6. This is my indication. I'm going to minimize that for one. I'm going to log back in on VM1. Now there is a small icon. I'm going to double click it. You see it's the same thing like here for the GateScanner desktop client. Now I have some errors, so obviously something did not run properly. I'm going to debug it by clicking on open logs. I'm going to let it throw the logs onto downloads. And as you can see, failed to get response from the desktop on port 2005, but the date is not from now, so this is irrelevant. I will try these guys. Now I do see that it is from this time. And here just debugging info. I'm going to go to the next one. I do see some general errors, failed user credentials. I am assuming that error failed to create host. I'm assuming that the mistake is on the configuration side, so I'm gonna build the client all over again. So first thing first, I'm gonna remove this one again, reboot the server and do the whole process. I'm gonna save you the time from this. You already watched it before, so I'm gonna skip that part. I'm gonna go back to the server, to the desktop server to create a new installation MSI file. This one I'm going to delete. Alright, let's go to the client configuration again. Now I figured the problem is everything I left the same, like here is the path to the config file, which I'm going to replace after the update. But I did, however, remove this one. I did my domain slash labadmin, which is my user. So I'm going to remove that because I'm going to assume that it's smart enough to know that it's already on this domain, which is pushed out from here. So just leave the user and let's give it one more try. Update MSI, finished. I'm going to leave that open because I'm going to take that file, put it in here, replaces. This is the Active Directory, guys. At this point I'm going to close it because I'm done with it. This is the file we just created now. Look at the time. I'm going to copy it outside. I'm going to close this one and let's log back into the VM. So it's AD lab admin and copy over this file as if we pushed it out from a group policy or whatever. I'm going to copy it, do the installation again. I'm going to save you the time. You already watched it. We're just checking if it works or not. So I'm going to be fast forwarding. Okay, restart. Installation finished. I'm going to restart it real quick. I'm going to log back in. Now I'm going to double click that small icon, or I can click from here, doesn't matter. And it works. Once you get that screen, it means you have bypassed all of the obstacles such as connection to the SQL, connection to the Active Directory, connection to and permission to the share folders on the Active Directory or wherever you want to place it. And if it doesn't work for some reason, troubleshoot those. So now I'm gonna log in. Not data clean, this user is not configured. Please contact administrator. Obviously I made a mistake in the configuration. I'm gonna check the users. I'll go to profiles. Now obviously it won't work because I forgot it to edit the AD user group. So I'm going to click the plus sign, search, and I'm going to select the group, edit, save. This will obviously requires to stop the two services, and then I'm going to start them again. So changes to take effect. Also gonna double save and let's give it a shot. That's it, we're in. I'm gonna choose data cleaning, next. Now I have a JPG image here. I'm gonna click next. I'm gonna click scan. Supposedly, if everything works properly, it should show you the progress. And just like that. Creating job complete, cleaning, waiting. Once all these three turn green, you know you should be fine. So we said it should save it on C drive, on SASA folder, and I can see the file scan has completed successfully. Congratulations, you now have an up and running SASA GateScanner desktop configured and functioning. Just to double check, copy that file here. You can delete that zip